Hare Krishna, welcome to the Q&A session for the Bhagavad Gita class. In this session, I will not, in the main class that happened last night, and we do the main classes on Friday evenings, US time, and that will be Saturday mornings in other places of the world like India or in the Eastern Hemisphere. And we are doing this Q&A session in the morning time on Saturday in the West Coast of the United States, which translates to evening time in the Eastern Hemisphere. So yesterday in the main class, we covered we completed chapter 1 and we did a lot of question answers for that group. All those recordings are available on YouTube, so you can go and view them. More on that a little later, but in this session and in that session, because it's a sort of a class, for the main class portion, I had participants were not allowed to unmute themselves so that there is no disturbance due to accidental unmutes and all. Here, I will keep that allowed, so you can unmute anytime and feel free to ask questions or ask for clarifications, etc. You can also raise your hand using the Zoom feature. You can put in your questions in the chat, and there are many such ways in which we can interact. So many questions had come up through the question answer form. I'll paste the link again if you all, if you have, here is the link. I'll put it in the chat. I will also share my screen in just a second, like right now. And I will also put it over here. So that's the link that you can use. Yeah, right there. So that's the link, gitapdx.com/contact us. So you can send us questions using that form as well. So these are the various ways in which we can interact with each other. So I already have a lot of questions from previous batches, or not batches, but previous sessions, previous classes that we did for the current batch, and we will go through those. But before we get started, let's recite the Mangalacharan prayers, which help us to receive the blessings of the previous acharyas so that we can understand these topics nicely. So we'll go to Veda Base. Veda Base, Bhagavad Gita, Introduction. And we will recite these prayers. We will recite 2 prayers before this one towards Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Just 1 second. Sorry. Okay. So we will do a quick recap of what we covered yesterday, just so that people can remember the topics. So yesterday we covered the remaining half of chapter 1. I will, and we covered the 4 primary reasons for Arjuna's not wanting to fight the war. And these reasons are covered in verse numbers 28 to 46. So the 4 reasons are, the first reason was compassion towards his relatives, his uncles, brothers, cousins, etc., grandfather, teachers. So many relatives were present during the war on the opposite side. So compassion and kindness for them. He uses the word swajana and bandhu. So they are all my bandhus, my friends, and swajan, my people who are from my family. Then the next one he says is that there is no enjoyment without my friends and family members. Even if I win the war, what is the point of winning the war when I won't have anybody to enjoy the victory with? So he is coming from a very, very good and very good thinking, very ideal. He's a very good person of good character. The third reason he gives is fear of sinful reactions. So he believes in pious punya karma and papa karma. And he says, I don't want to commit any sinful acts by killing these people, even though they may want to kill me, because the Kauravas wanted to kill Pandavas so many times. But he's saying, I don't want to indulge in such activities. I would rather let them kill me. I will sit unarmed and let them kill me, but why should I kill them and incur sin? And the fourth reason was the harmful effects on society. That if such a massive war happens, so many people will die, so many children will become orphan, will become fatherless, and then the whole society will collapse or will be heavily impacted. So why cause all this destruction in society? And rather, I will bow out of the war and let the war not happen. So that was the sort of, these were the 4 reasons given by Arjun for not fighting the war. So a couple of very important things that we discussed here is that Arjuna is in the mode of goodness. He is a very, very good person, obviously as compared to Duryodhan, but in general also a very, very good person. And one of the key concepts that we covered was that being a good person, being a good-natured person is very conducive for receiving spiritual knowledge. When one is crooked or manipulative or trying to deceive others or harm others, or even having that mentality, which 99% of people in Kali Yuga have, even though you may not enact such things, the tendency or the mentality is like that. I will do like this, I will do like that to him, why he didn't do this, why he didn't do that. Just constantly engaging the mind in all the worldly affairs around our comforts. We want to enjoy and others should make us enjoy. Remember the discussion we had in the first class where Duryodhan is the center and he said, all of you should do things so that I can enjoy. So we are in that mode, and that mode is not conducive for making spiritual progress. So Arjun's mode, which is a mode of goodness, which is a mode of being a pious person, a good person, and we will discuss in detail. There are so many places in Bhagavad Gita what it really means to be a good person. So I'm sure many of you will be wanting to ask that. All that will become clear as we go along. But you generally know what is a good person. It's not lost on you what a good person means. And that's what it means. There is no special or no uh, uh, magically different definition of being a good person in the Bhagavad Gita. Everything that you know about being a good person largely applies. So being a good person is the best platform, is the best mood, is the best situation for receiving spiritual knowledge. So that is very, very key. And that is why Arjun was a perfect candidate for receiving spiritual knowledge, which will start right in the beginning of chapter 2. So that was one very key learning, which is for us to become a good person. You cannot paddle two boats at the same time, that I will be a very, very worldly minded person trying to suppress others so that I can grow. You can grow on your own merit. You can also grow by pushing other people down. So, especially this aspect of pushing other people down, suppressing them, dominating over them, all those things do not go hand in hand with spiritual progress. Then the other key concept that we learned was that Arjun was so well prepared for the war. He was extremely well prepared. When they were in exile in Vanvas for 13 years, Arjun was constantly preparing because he knew this war is going to come. He was acquiring all sorts of weapons from various Devis and Devatas and so on and so forth. So he spent his time preparing for the war. But at the time when the war was about to start, he panicked. He became completely confused. He had no idea why he should fight the war. And this was a very big um, decision, a very critical point, an inflection point in his life. And all the material preparation that he had done in terms of preparing for the war fell short. So a key learning for us, a key concept for us is that uh, in the time of greatest calamity, or in the time of very crucial inflection points in our life, all the material knowledge, all the material preparation that we have done might fall short. But spiritual education and spiritual strength that we have acquired will never fall short. And that is why Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjun. And at the end of speaking Bhagavad Gita, Arjun he was fully prepared for the war. So that we must do material level of preparation. It's not, nobody is saying you should lay yourself vulnerable. Whatever material preparation to prepare for calamity one needs to do must be done. But uh, without spiritual education, without spiritual strength, all of that might fall short, just like in Arjun's case. So this was another key concept that we understood. And we all face certain very certain calamities in our life. All of us, first of all, are going to die. That death is not fun, as far as I have heard. I have not experienced it, but I have heard. And uh, losing other loved ones is also a very hard thing. So spiritual strength is very important to deal with uh, all those occurrences or all those calamities and catastrophes in our life. So that's what we covered yesterday. Okay, so let's see, are there any questions that we want to take, live questions? If not, we can, and you can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself and speak. Either way is fine. Am I sharing the screen? No. Okay. Okay. So are there any questions on anything that we have discussed so far?
Prabhuji?
Yes. Is somebody
Prabhuji,
trying?
may I ask something?
Yes.
Prabhuji, in the morning, yesterday session, you told us that we should talk to Krishna whenever we are in problem or we should discuss our things with Krishna.
Okay.
And
Not only when we are in problem.
I know in normal course also,
Every
we
day.
should talk to Krishna, and we can utter Krishna, 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 Krishna like that.
Yes.
But I do talk to Krishna, with the eye-to-eye contact. But in place of Krishna, whenever I do, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva, I say. Which is it okay, or we should switch over to Krishna only?
No,
It
Vasudeva
will
and
better-
Krishna are one and the same. So that is, God has so many names, so many bona fide names. And Vasudeva is very, very bona fide name. Krishna is a very beautiful name, is Vasudeva. He is son of Vasudev, and that's why is known as Vasudeva. So yes, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is perfect, no problem.
You say, Prabhuji, you said Krishna has got special. When we talk Krishna, it has got special sort of thing. Something you
Potency.
mentioned like that.
Potency, but I compared it to the word Coca-Cola.
Okay, right, sir, right, sir.
Okay, I didn't compare Vasudeva and Krishna. They are the same. Okay.
Om Namo
What
Bhagavate.
I was
Om
trying to
Namo
make is, it's not just some sound that you are trying to make any kind of sound and it will have the same effect, and it just happens to be Krishna or Vasudeva. I could as well take the name Coca-Cola. That was the point I was trying to make.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva is fine.
Absolutely fine.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what is important, of course, is what you speak. What the words that come out, the vibrations, the sound frequencies are very important. Plus, very important also is the consciousness. If you are speaking Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, but you are thinking about what you are going to have for lunch, or what you are going to, where you are going to enjoy the next movie you are going to watch, then it is less potent. So also we must focus our mind on the name that we are taking. Find out the meaning of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. As you are speaking, focus on what you are speaking. Just like when you talk to me, try putting some music or some other podcast or some other talk in your ears, and then try to talk to me and try to focus on what they are saying. You cannot do that. Okay, so trying the mind is when you are just speaking mechanically without focusing on what you are saying, then you can think about other things. But if you want to connect what you are thinking to what you are speaking, that is where full focus comes. So try that as the next level.
I do not speak. Actually, when I close my eyes and see it with breathing, I just would like to accumulate that.
The recommended process is also to speak.
Okay.
Okay, we will see in Bhagavad Gita, so many times the word Kirtana has come. Okay. So Kirtana means to speak. You cannot do Kirtan in the mind. That is called Smaranam. The Smaran process and the Kirtan process are separate. They are not one and the same. So Smaran is good, which means remembering. But Kirtan is very important as well, which means speaking. Okay, thank you.
I feel blessed. Thank you.
So, Chitra Mataji Singh, I had asked a question in chat box this morning. So I will collect all those things. Yesterday, after finishing the class, I went to sleep, and then, this morning. So whatever questions that you have put in the chat, we will take up next week. I haven't had the time to process them. Okay. If you want to put it again in the chat today, then I can look at it live, but I'll have to go through yesterday's chat and process all the questions. So then we can take it up.
I can ask you now.
Yes, please go ahead.
This is basically, it is said that whatever we do is already ordained by God. We don't do anything of our own. Everything is has been predestined. Then if I do something wrong, that is also predestined as proposed by God. Then how can I stop myself from doing that wrong deed and do a good one instead?
Yeah. So yesterday we had discussed this in the class. Okay. So I would like you to, or request you to go back and go through the class. Okay. One request is there that you should understand the concepts in the class. Your exact question may not be something that we have dealt with, but the concepts are all covered and you have to use your intelligence to connect. Oh, if I have this question, I apply this concept and I will get the answer. So yesterday, here is what we talked about: choices and consequences. Okay.
Yes, we did.
Consequences are preordained. Choices are our own. Free will. They are not preordained. All human beings, all living entities for that matter, not just human beings, all living entities have their own free will, out of which they can make free choices. But once you make the choice, the consequence is given. I took the example yesterday. You can choose whether to jump off a cliff or not. But once you jump, the consequences are clear. You will break your bones, break your head, whatever will happen, will happen. Okay. So we have made our choices. So in your question, you are saying everything is preordained. No, not everything is preordained. Now, out of making certain choices in the past, we had also talked about in one of the previous classes, a concept of instant reaction and delayed reaction. That depends on the choice we have made and the consequences. Okay. If you play with fire, the consequence will be instant. You will get burnt. But if you keep smoking, the consequence will be delayed. After 20 years, you might get cancer. So that depends on what the choices and the action that you are taking based on the choice.
Okay.
The
Okay.
consequences will be determined. So,
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
So yeah, but anyway, let me finish the concept. The concept
Yes.
is that I forgot what I was saying. So choices and then instant reaction and delayed reaction, and that's how you get the consequences. Yes. So in the case of delayed reaction, the reaction may happen sometime later and the reaction may be prolonged. Okay, like if you put your finger in the fire, it might burn. You put some band-aid or whatever, in 1 week, you will be fine. But if you get cancer, it might take 1 year for the treatment, and then you may get fine. Do you agree? So the consequences may be prolonged as well. They may not be very short-term consequences. But how you deal, there are many choices you have even during the suffering of the consequences. There also you have a choice. Okay. And how, and that is what we call as, making the best out of a bad bargain. Fine, you did something in the past. Now you are suffering. Okay, fine, I have to suffer. How do I make the best use of a bad bargain? Some people say, if you have a crushed lemon, make a lemonade. Some people say, if the egg gets broken, make an omelette. Make the best of a bad bargain. So many people, just as an example, they go to jail. Every jail, at least in the United States, I don't know in other countries, they have a library. You can go while you are in jail, you can read spiritual books and try to uplift yourself, try to become a good person, even when you are in jail. So many people write letters to our, in ISKCON, one of the things that they do is supporting the people who are in correction facilities or jails. They write letters, they ask spiritual questions when they read books, and we answer those questions by writing back to them. So there are people who are trying to make the best use of a bad bargain. So all these things can be done. But the important
Okay.
part is we have our own free will. It is not correct to say everything is happening. We are just puppets. We have absolutely no say in the matter. That's not true. You have a say in the matter. So many, is it all an illusion? We are making choices. You made the choice right now to join the class or not join the class. That was your choice. It was not preordained. Now, our choices are not unlimited. Our choices are limited. You cannot choose that I want to become the president of the country. You cannot choose that, or I want to become the CEO of my company or whatever. You cannot choose that I want to, so many things are out of our choice domain. So we do have choice, but we have limited choice. Okay, any other questions?
No, here I want one small question for the clarification. There was one Angulimal. He used to cut the thumbs of everybody. He was a very bad person. Later on, he moved towards spiritualism and he was accepted as a devotee. How would you describe this? A bad person suddenly being accepted and going into the spiritual path and being respected.
Yeah, there are many such instances even in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures as well. That is because he came himself in contact with God. He was very lucky. And this is known as the concept of mercy or kripa of Bhagwan. Okay, mercy doesn't happen. It is just causeless. There is no cause. When you do kripa or daya on someone, then there is no reason why God may do that. He was very lucky to come in contact with Lord Buddha, who is none other than Lord Vishnu. And that is why he got that mercy. So we must, so you are asking a very good question. We must strive to come in contact with devotees of God. Try to come in contact with them, because then by coming in contact with them, we can invoke the mercy of God. A very, very beautiful example I was giving. There are so many learnings from the story of Ambarish Maharaj. And I was speaking on this topic yesterday. I request you all to go look at those videos. It's a 4-part series on the YouTube channel in the Srimad Bhagavatam section. Okay, and how by coming in contact with a pure devotee, one can get the mercy of God. Because a devotee is very dear to God. Okay, and then those who are dear to the devotees are also dear to God. Okay, it's like, let's say, you're the friend of somebody whose father is a very rich man. Okay, so if you are a very close friend and the father is sending his son to a vacation, the son says to the father, what will I do going alone? Can I take my friend along? The father is so rich, he doesn't care. He says, yeah, sure, take your friend along, take 2 other friends along, pick 3 friends and then go enjoy. So all those friends also get the benefit. And they got the benefit because they associated with somebody who was very dear to the rich man. Here in this example, rich man is God. the devotee, a pure devotee of God is like his son. We should try to associate with them so that we can become dear to the devotee of God. And then that way we can become dear to God as well.
So it means it's a satsang.
Well, satsang,
Keeping the good, excuse me.
We have to find the right people to associate with. Okay. Does anybody else have any question? Okay. If not,
I have a question about attachments, and I did send it in the chat window. Do you want me to read?
you sent it right now?
Yeah, I sent it
Yeah,
right
why don't
now.
you ask it? Yeah, I'll take more time to read and all that. It's better to hear your voice and hear it, live.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. So coming to attachments, I understand that like I'm alone, like in my journey, right? So that's what, like, you have to be detached and all those. I do understand that, but I mean, entertain people like who come into my life for the money or for the name or for the position that I have, that I bring in, or the value I bring in for them. They don't come for the true, I mean, it's not a true attachment, but they do come for, like you said, they expect something out of it. And I do fall for their tricks, and I know that it's not true, but I still fall for it. Like, how can I completely get out of that type of drama, and what should I do? So though I know, like, okay, I have to be detached, but I still like get into that type of drama. So I don't know if it's a right question or not, coming to the attachments.
Every
but
question is right. So I think you had sent this question to me earlier as well. I'm trying
yeah,
to.
the Google
find-
Forms, I think after the last week's session, I'm not sure if you answered it during any of these sessions. So
Yep, right here. So the second question, this one. I understand I'm alone in my journey, but I do entertain people who come into my life for the money, the value they bring in. Yeah, we have to interact with people, and I fall for their tricks. Yes, that happens. How can I completely get out of this drama? That's your question. And those are also the words you used. Okay, so this is a very nice question, and I've been thinking how to answer it, but a couple of things I will say, and then maybe you can ask some follow-up question. And I would request the other people to listen to this question answer session and see how these answers apply to your questions. Your question may not be exactly the question that she is asking, but generally a lot of the questions are of the same nature. And if you get the concept, then you will understand the answer to your question will also be clear to you. So please think or listen carefully, apply your introspection, contemplation, and extrapolate these answers to apply them to your own situation. We will still go through all the questions that we have received, but the more we can generalize and you can apply the concepts, the easier it will be. We can go through more questions and more concepts in that way. So first, a couple of things to be realized, and these will be clear as we go through the Bhagavad Gita. One more thing I will say, which I said yesterday, I can give a very detailed answer and explain all the concepts and all as I'm giving the answer, but I will choose to give shorter answers so that we can go through more questions and more concepts, because many of the answers that I will give will be based on concepts that we will cover in the Bhagavad Gita later as well in detail. So I will give a brief answer now, and more unfoldment will occur as we go forward. So please be okay with that model. So first of all, we have to realize what is ours. Okay. We say people take advantage of us, or what was the word that you used? I fall for their tricks. So something that some advantage has been taken from us, and something has been taken away from us, or something that we don't want has been given to us. They offloaded their problems to you, or they took away your happiness from you. End of the day, that those are the two fundamental things. We have to realize what is ours. We have come empty-handed. There's some very important sayings are there. Khali haath aaye the, khali haath jana hai. So we come with empty hands, and ultimately there is nothing that belongs to us. So what is this great attachment? We talked about attachments in the previous discussions. What is this great attachment that we have to material things that we are worried about? And what can anybody really take away from us? Okay, so that is one thing to contemplate about. It is our strong attachments to things that is causing us. Now, this is a very high level answer. The second point I want to mention is that the truest things in life, the most valuable things in life, cannot be taken away from us. Okay, what is it? Our body, at a very we will cover in very, I'm going through some very deeper concepts. The body is we will cover in this second chapter. In the very beginning of second chapter, we will cover this. The body can be taken away from us, but the soul cannot be taken away. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right in the second chapter, in the beginning, that we will see, nobody can kill the soul. You can kill the body, but the soul cannot be killed. You cannot drive a dagger through someone's heart and kill the soul. So nobody can capture your soul. Your soul will eternally be free, cannot be captivated by anyone. Your body can be captivated, but not your soul. So the most precious things in our existence cannot be captured. Coming to the Bhagavad Gita, the other precious thing that cannot be captured, which is what will be the focus, the main focus of Bhagavad Gita, is our love, or I would say loving relationship with God. Nobody can take that away from you. They may separate you, and when I say God, you can replace that with your loved one, just as to get a sense of it. If you love someone, they may separate the loved one from you. You may be separated. Maybe they kill your loved one. Your loved one is no more, but they cannot kill your love for the loved one, because that only resides in your heart. And nobody can kill God, obviously. So your love for God cannot be taken away by anyone. And when one becomes a devotee of God, he derives so much happiness from that relationship, tremendous happiness, that cannot be taken away by anyone. So the problem is, we have put our shelter in our attachments. When I say attachments, I mean material attachments, or objects of sense gratification. My house, my relatives, my wife, my husband, my children, my job, my money, my property, whatever it may be, my body. We have taken shelter of these material attachments. When we take shelter of the Supreme Lord and we derive the happiness in our loving relationship with him, then that's it. That is permanent. Nobody ever can take that away from us at all. So at that point, all these things that you are talking about, the drama and this and that, become very small, extremely small. Okay, it's like, you are enjoying a vacation with your family members in some place, and some ruffian on the street calls you a name. Okay, do you care? It may hurt you for 30 seconds or even 3 seconds, and then you forget, you go back to enjoying with your family, isn't it? It's so petty, it's so small, you don't even care, because you have this big, wonderful happiness, eternal happiness that you are enjoying. Is that making sense? So one thing that you will understand, so those are very deep and high level concept, or high level as in like very high or grand concepts. But to start with, one thing is we must always try to start small. Okay, don't try to imitate or pretend to be a great devotee. The things that we described are, you know, are the characteristics or qualities of those who have developed that pure love for God. We have not done that yet. So don't try to imitate them or try to pretend to be like them. That will only lead to disaster, catastrophic outcomes. So start small. You want to become a world heavy lifter, whatever, you know, world champion. You start by lifting 5 kg and you keep practicing. And then one day you might be able to live 500 kg and you may be the world champion. Okay, you cannot become world champion overnight. You have to start small. So how do you start small? Start small by developing detachment from simple things in life. Very simple things in life. Nothing was belonging, and always remember this concept that there was what is ours. We didn't come with anything. Always remember this example of a bank, accountant or bank manager. You are simply a caretaker of God's property. Like a bank manager is the caretaker of the customer's property. Now, if the customer owes some money to someone else, he will write a check. He will say, tell the bank, please give $10,000 to this person. You are the bank manager. You just are supposed to give the money to the other person based on the check. Okay, the bank manager doesn't feel, oh, my $10,000 have been taken away. I'm so sad. They were never his. They never belonged to him. They always belonged to the other guy. We are just the temporary caretakers. So we must always treat ourselves like a bank manager. Today, there may be more money. Tomorrow, it may be taken away from us. One day, everything will be taken away from us. Everything. The day we die, nothing will remain with us. So we must operate from that mentality, and we must try to develop detachment from simple things in life. What is one of the simplest things in life? Or I wouldn't say it's simple, but try it out. Pick on something that you don't like to do. You have been wanting to, let's say for me, it was like, getting angry. Next time you feel there is some anger, remember, take it on as a goal. This week, I will not get angry. Whatever may be the situation, I won't. Try it on. Give up that propensity, that the enjoyment or the satisfaction you get by getting angry on someone or criticizing someone, saying bad things to someone, or any pick up. There are so many things like that, and that is detachment. Okay. And ultimately, if somebody is taking advantage of you, now again, in the beginning, you have to be intelligent. You have to be smart. Don't let people take advantage of you. I'm not saying become a complete dumbo or a bozo and let people take advantage of you. That's not what I'm saying in the beginning stages. Do whatever you are doing to prevent people from taking undue advantage. But here I will end with the answer with this final concept. And this is again evident from the story of Ambarish Maharaj. When you become very dear to God, a pure devotee of God, God protects you. In Ambarish Maharaj's case, Lord Vishnu gave him his own Sudarshan Chakra. Those who are attending the Bhagavatam classes might realize or might remember. And the Sudarshan Chakra was protecting constantly 24/7. So when you are in God's protection, nobody can hurt you at all. At all. So what is the fear then in that case? Like the chauffeur of the president gets the best security protection in the world, or the driver of the president, he's as much protected as the president because he's always with the president. Even though his qualification is nothing, all he knows is driving. So one should try to become close to God, and then one is protected by God, and one completely gets these even feelings that anything is mine. What can anybody take away from us? Completely disappear. And even if some people take advantage, God deals with them directly. This person is simply busy in his own bhajan to God. There is this wonderful story of another devotee called Narsi Mehta. Somewhere you can read it, but in very short, he was a very simple person who used to live in Maharashtra a few hundred years ago. And he was always engaged in bhajan of God. All the villagers used to make fun of him. And he used to go and do some petty jobs for people, and they didn't used to pay him properly. They wouldn't remunerate him. They would cheat him. And he was just a very simple person, very poor person. And he was living his life like that. And his father had passed away. So there was this ceremony that they wanted to do for the annual, whatever anniversary, the death anniversary of the father. He had a brother who was very jealous of him, or very did not like him. He said, last year I did the ceremony, this year you have to do the ceremony. And he knew very well that my brother has no money. But he said, okay, I will do the ceremony. Till the last, I'm cutting short the story very much. Till the last day, he didn't have any money. His wife was getting worried. Where will you get the money to do the ceremony or this or that? He said, Krishna will arrange somehow. Now, this is a very, very, very high level of devotion that I'm talking, the highest possible level. So finally, his wife said, you go out, do some work, do something, and get some money so that we can do the ceremony you have promised. So in the meantime, his brother sent out invitations to all the villagers. Oh, come to my brother's house. There is a big ceremony and everything, to just put his own brother in trouble. So this man, Narsi Mehta, went to do some work. So he went to a shopkeeper to buy some salt. The shopkeeper said, why don't you sing some bhajan? He also was trying to take advantage. He knew that if I engage Narsi Mehta in bhajan, he will get busy. He will forget everything else. He said, why don't you do some bhajan? I will give you the raw ingredients, the salt and whatever, rice, everything I will give you. So Narsi Mehta started doing bhajan, and he got so lost in the bhajan, he lost track of time. He didn't even come back home. On the other side, while he was doing the bhajan, on the other side, his wife saw Narsi Mehta finally came back. And he came back with lot of ingredients. Not only lot of ingredients, he came back with gold plates to serve the guests. All the guests came. Not only gold plates, he had returned gifts for the guests, gold plated saris, all those things. When the villagers came, they said, what happened to this Narsi Mehta? How did he become so rich? And all the guests left fully satisfied, and they said, take these return gifts. They were fully satisfied with, this was the best ceremony ever. And then wife asked Narsi Mehta, where did you get all this? Narsi Mehta says, I will tell you, let me go take a bath and I will come back. So he goes to take a bath. After some time, Narsi Mehta comes back. And then he says, I'm sorry, I completely forgot. I got busy in bhajan. The ceremony would not have happened. The wife said, what do you mean? The ceremony was so beautiful. You were the one who was doing all this ceremony and you brought so many things. He said, what? I brought it? I was just sitting there. I lost track of time. And then he realized that Lord Krishna must have come and brought all the riches and everything with him to keep his devotee happy. So bottom line is that Lord Krishna takes care of his devotees. And that is the core message of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, the message is not how to prevent people from manipulating you, how to do this, how to do that. There are so many books in the market you can read how to, deal with people. Bhagavad Gita is a book which develops love of God in our heart. And when we develop that love of God in our heart, then really God takes care of all our problems. There is this beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita I want to show you. 9.22. We are deep into the bhakti portion of Bhagavad Gita. And in 9.22, this is very, very celebrated verse, which says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pariupasate tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahami aham. So Ananyas chintayanto mam, that is the key part. These devotees, Ananyas chintayanto mam. Ananya means nothing else. No other. Anya means something else. Anya. Ananya means nothing else. They don't think about anything else. Chintayanto mam. Other than chinta means to think. Other than thinking about me, they don't do anything else. And like that, they worship me. Ye jana pariupasate. Tesham nitya abhiyuktanam. To such people who are fully engaged in thinking about me. Nitya. Nitya means always. Abhiyuktanam means doing the bhajan to me. Yogakshemam vahami aham. Yogakshemam means that I protect. Shema means to protect whatever they have. Yoga, whatever they have, I protect. And vahami aham. Vaha means vahan, vehicle. Vahan, you have heard the word vahan. Vahami means I carry, I become the vehicle. Vahami aham, and I carry what they lack. So the translation is, those who are always engaged in work, always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form. To them, I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Lord Krishna is making this promise in Bhagavad Gita. Another very, very nice verse is 9.30 or 31, where Lord Krishna says, Kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhaktah pranashyati. Declare it. Go declare it to everyone. Pratijanihi. Na me bhaktah pranashyati. My devotee never perishes. Nothing happens to my devotee. भगवान के भक्त का कोई बाल भी बांका नहीं कर सकता. So please remember this. This is one of the core teachings of Bhagavad Gita. And try to develop that devotion in your heart, and you will see how the world around you will completely transform. And people will automatically stop taking advantage of you. Okay, I hope that all helps. Am I still audible?
Thank you.
Yes, it may not make a lot of sense right now how this will connect, because we are thinking at a material plane.
Right. No, it was a great answer. So maybe I didn't get the entire thing, but I do get the concept and try to implement it.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay, we have a few more minutes left, and there were some questions in the Q&A hour time. Let's see if we can tackle some of them. So here there was a question. I'm always feeling God is with me. I practiced my mind to chant the name of Ram always, but I have strong hatred towards few people because of their wrongdoings. Why am I not able to see God in them when Krishna is omnipresent? I can understand this may be the situation. Maybe these people have hurt you really badly. So start by developing forgiveness for little bit lower people. Lower people means those who have not hurt you so badly. the end goal is to be able to forgive them so that their wrongdoings or their hurtful feelings in your heart do not prevent you from making spiritual progress. The definition of forgiveness is, there's a very beautiful definition of forgiveness. Okay, forgiveness, when somebody has hurt you, forgiveness does not mean you give back them your trust so that they hurt you again. Then again, you give back your trust and again, they will hurt you. That's the wrong definition or the wrong understanding of forgiveness. Forgiveness means that letting go so that both you and them, both you and them can continue in your spiritual journey. That is the meaning of forgiveness. In the context of Bhagavad Gita, in the context of spiritual teachings. Often what happens is that the hurt feelings that we carry in our heart, the biggest problem is they prevent us in making progress in our spiritual journey. And that is the biggest damage that carrying this hurtful feeling in our heart causes. The sooner you can let go of that, you will be able to make progress. And if you are able to communicate it to them that I have let go, that's all, I have let it go. Please, you don't think about it as well. You are causing them to make progress as well. Otherwise, they might also be thinking, if they have hurt you, they know they have hurt you. They may not acknowledge it publicly or to you, but inside their heart, they know. Duryodhan absolutely was fully aware all the wrong things he has done towards Pandavas. It was not that he was unaware. Arey, maine kya kiya? That was never the situation. Okay, so if you communicate to them that I have let go, and so should you let go, and you make your progress on spiritual journey, I really would like you to make progress on spiritual journey. Please keep going. Let go of this. Whatever happened, happened, fine. And I am letting go as well. That is forgiveness. It doesn't mean you give back your trust. Okay, come back, hurt me again. So that will come, try that in smaller situations. And chanting, just chanting, but like I said to the other Prabhuji, that when you are chanting the name of God, also the consciousness should be focused on the name of God as well. But if in your mind all these things are going on, then the chanting of the name of God has much less effect. So throw out these feelings from your heart, and not forcibly, but by process of forgiveness, which we have just discussed. Once you are able to get rid of these feelings genuinely at the root level, then your mind can focus on the name of God as well. And there may be 10,000 other things going on in your mind. So one by one, you have to weed out all these things. It's a long process because so many lifetimes, millions of lifetimes, we have forgotten God. All these weeds have grown up. You have not mowed the lawn in years. It's going to take some time to mow the lawn. Is it making sense? Whoever asked this question, I can't remember. This question was asked. We'll take one more question and then we will see. Okay, this is a long one. About conditional love and unconditional love. So, okay. Okay, let's talk about this later. It deserves a longer answer. This question was about women's monthly periods. Should we not touch items related to God, not do puja or eat prasadam? So Bhagavad Gita is a I will say that Bhagavad Gita is very modern principles. It's based on it's very liberal. It's not like a orthodox conservative kind of a, it's evergreen, by the way. It was spoken 5,000 years ago, but the mindset is extremely liberal. The point is to get the concept and to develop a loving relationship with God, and God does not impose rules that this is how you must love me. Okay, so end of the day, the answer is no. In love of God, whether you're having periods or whether you're not having, or whatever may be the case, you can always connect with God in a loving manner. There is no restrictions. Now, cleanliness is another one aspect. And, our acharyas do say that if you are serving the deity of God, if you're doing murti pujan, bhajan can be done. Prasadam can be honored. You can eat prasad. But if you're doing murti pujan, you can avoid that during this time of the month. But taking the name of God from your mouth, eating prasadam, reading a book, although touching the book, all that is allowed. All that is absolutely allowed. Now, this is where the understanding of guru also comes in. We must follow the instructions of our guru. For that, you must have a guru. Otherwise, whose instructions will you follow? And some acharyas give different rules. If you go to one doctor, he might say, do this. If you go to another doctor, the general thing will be the same, but he might give a slightly different prescription. Now, which one will you follow? You can definitely take first opinion, second opinion, third opinion. Ultimately, you have to pick one of them and move with it. So if you are picking Srila Prabhupada as the Acharya or as our Guru, whose instructions we follow, he has given copious instructions. And his instruction was, don't do Murti Seva or Murti Pujan during this time, but you must do your japa, your kirtan, your reading of the books, your eating prasadam. All those things can continue without any interruptions. So that is the instruction from our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. This question says, how should I surrender to Krishna completely while understanding Gita? Okay, the first step in surrendering to while understanding Gita is to understand Gita. Consider that as a step in this process of surrender. Just understand Bhagavad Gita first. And then it will be clear the next step as to how to surrender further. So we talked about this question, destiny and fate. How do you see the principle of predeterminism? I don't want to get into quantum computing and all that, but quantum computing won't solve much, by the way, in the spiritual realm. But we did talk about choices and consequences. So consequences are predetermined. The choices are our own. Okay, it's 11:05. I will stop here. And so we talked about time cycles. We talked about detachment from family members. And we said that, if your family is a family of devotees, then you can, you don't need to even detach. But if the family becomes a point of your a contention, where the family is becoming a hurdle in your making progress in spiritual life, then you have to mentally detach. Mentally, then somebody asked, this was a question, how do you detach mentally? The answer is through the process of TME. TME stands for tolerate, mitigate, emigrate. 3 steps. Tolerate for some time. It's okay if they are annoying. If they say, why are you doing all this? Hare Krishna and Krishna doesn't exist. Come on, let's go, whatever, to some move, whatever. So you can tolerate, okay, they don't know. You can pray for them in your heart. Maybe someday God will show them the right path. All those things you can do. That's tolerate. Mitigate, mitigate means you can try to explain them. You can try to do something about it. So mitigation is a external action, some external action that you take to help the situation. Tolerate is internal. Mitigate is something external. Finally, immigrate means then you detach, physical separation, so that they are not in your space of your consciousness. Now, in some cases, they may still be in your consciousness. You're detached, but now you're sad. There are processes to deal with that. Okay, it's it's 11:07. We will stop here. We'll respect the time, and we will take more questions as we go along. So I'll stop here. I'll stop the recording, and thank you very much for attending. I look forward to having you in the next class and the question answer session. Please keep sending your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. One request is to try to connect the concepts at your level itself, so that we don't have to answer each question with similar answer for related kind of or similar questions. Thank you so much. See you next time. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you.
Thank you.